Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps. In today's special episode, we're talking to Adib Khorram. Adib is the award-winning and best-selling author of several books, including Darius the Great is Not Okay, Darius the Great Deserves Better, Kiss and Tell, and more. His newest novel, titled The Breakup Lists, released on April 2nd. So welcome, Adib. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And thank you for the sneak peek into The Breakup List. It was so witty and clever. I'm so excited to talk to you more about it.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it and certainly had a lot of fun writing it.
Oh my goodness, I imagine. I hope we get into that a little bit more. So this is also cheesy, but because our podcast is called Narratives and Nightcaps, we like to talk to people about their preferred beverage, whether that's coffee or water or something more fun. But I see that you are a tea drinker. Is that correct?
I am indeed. I do drink coffee, but mostly I drink espresso, and only at a snooty place where I can get it in a little cup and like sit on a patio, sipping it slowly and judging people as they walk by.
That's the best place and time to do it.
Right? Like that's the only time I ever want coffee. Otherwise, I'm very much a tea drinker.
And any specific kind of tea?
Yeah, today I'm actually drinking Dragonwell, which is a pan-roasted green tea from China, also called Longjing, and it's quite delicious.
It sounds nice.
Yeah, very authentic. Very what word do I want to use? Yeah, authentic. Very different. Not just your typical Earl Grey.
Listen, I grew up on Star Trek: The Next Generation. I have my Captain Picard right here at my desk. I have a great deal of love in my heart for tea Earl Grey hot. Oh, I think that's even what my mug says.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's funny. That's perfect.
But today it's Dragonwell.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get right into it because I'm so excited. But for those who haven't read it yet, can you give us a little bit about what The Breakup List is all about?
Sure. The Breakup List is the story of Jackson Ghaznavi, who's a 17-year-old gay, deaf Iranian American living in Kansas City, Missouri. He is a stage manager and a bit of a cynic, I would say. He really doesn't believe in love, and his older sister, Jasmine, loves love and is constantly falling in and out of love. And so is constantly getting her heart broken. And so to help his sister cope, he makes breakup lists wherein he lists all of the flaws of his sister's ex-boyfriends, from very real flaws to sometimes just imagined flaws or even just petty grievances that Jackson has with the world. However, things take a turn when Liam, the senior swim captain, auditions for the fall musical. Jackson befriends him and then gets alarmed when Jasmine and Liam start dating, primarily because Jackson realizes he also has a crush on Liam. And of course, things don't work out. Jasmine and Liam break up. And as so often happens with theater kids, drama ensues.
It sure does. A little side note, but as I was reading this, I kept thinking, man, I wish I'd made breakup lists like that, either for myself or for other friends or just in general. So smart.
Listen, it's a great bonding activity, even if it is a tiny bit petty, but only a little bit, I think.
Yeah, just a little, but
tell anyone.
No, and it's a nice reminder to yourself of stay strong. This is why you broke up. This is why you don't like them. It's empowering almost.
Which I would argue you need that a little bit as a high schooler. Like high school's tough. It's a tough time. So
high school is tough, and honestly, romance, love is tough no matter the age, and heartbreak is tough no matter the age. We all, maybe we get more experienced with being hurt, but that doesn't make it actually hurt any less. Right. We just get better tools for dealing with it.
Well said. Well, tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the story. I know, or I saw that you had some theater experience in high school as well. Did that play a part in this? No pun intended there.
I did. The story came from kind of several places. One is that I, many years ago, I had an idea in my mind that I wanted to write a book that was basically like, what was Leslie Knope like in high school? Like Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation. So I wrote a book and that book featured a very early version of Jackson and Liam and Jackson's best friend Bowie. But the story made no sense. It was not good. I was like, this is garbage. So I just tucked it away. However, several years later, and I have permission to share this, my sister went through a really nasty breakup. And to make her feel better, I made a breakup list for her about all of her ex's flaws. And they were just like complete ridiculousness. They like had no bearing on an actual human being, but they did cheer my sister up. And I was describing this process to another friend of mine, Natalie C. Parker, who's also a young adult author. And she's like, there's a story there somewhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. My sister will never forgive me. But I asked my sister, and she's like, no, I think that's funny as long as I get a free copy. And I'm like, you're my sister. You always get a free copy of everything. And then I remembered Jackson from that old Leslie notebook. And I was like, oh my gosh, this might actually be the right vehicle for him. But at the time, there was no theater in that book. But I was a theater kid all throughout high school. I actually went to college also and got my bachelor's in theatrical lighting design. I spent 10 years in theater and events in Kansas City. And I was like, okay, I know exactly where to set this and who to have Jackson become. And so I guess it was a confluence of all those things that really inspired the book. And it was completely self-indulgent writing it because I was just remembering and all the shenanigans that I had gotten up to over my years in the theater, or secondhand shenanigans I'd heard from friends, and just putting them all into the book, which was great up until it came time to edit it, and the book was like 120,000 words, and we're like, let's maybe get rid of a third of this. So I did have to say goodbye to some of the more hilarious anecdotes that didn't actually move the plot forward, but I kept a few. I always tell myself I'm allowed to pardon one darling per book that gets to make it through the editorial process, just because it makes me happy.
That's so funny. So you make me think, given your experience, we recently talked to Jenny Myers-Sane too, who also has a theater background as well and is a YA author. And with you saying that, just makes me think back to that conversation with her where she said that she thinks having a background in theater actually helps her writing a lot. Do you find the same thing?
I agree. I would say not only does it help with writing, but it also helps navigate publishing. Theater really prepares you for dealing with all kinds of characters in life. There's a lot of strong personalities in a high school or college theater department, or in a professional company. And so you learn how to get along, you learn how to stand up when you need to stand up and keep your mouth shut when you need to keep your mouth shut. And that's been a really powerful skill, I guess, not only in publishing, but also just in life. But when it comes to like the craft of writing, theater is such a unique and really boundary pushing art form that I think exposure to theater opens your mind to new and interesting and different ways of telling stories. And training in theater, even if you were like me, a lighting designer, like I had to take a few acting classes to get my degree. And the tools that actors use when they're creating characters are the same tools that I now use as a writer when creating characters for a book. And I have, many other writer friends who are not theater kids, and they talk about like worksheets that they'll do for characters or interviews that they'll give for the characters. And that just sounds so different from the sort of organic process that I learned of acting, of you make choices, you commit to those choices, you look in your life and see how your experiences can relate to those choices, how they can be twisted to flesh out a background for your character. And I find it so fascinating, but that is really how I go about making my characters.
That's the perfect segue, because I also want to talk to you more about your characters.
Okay. Who loves me making segues?
Right. Thank you so much. You're making it so easy. I was just curious. So I know obviously you're talking about your inspiration and how maybe a character is drawn from you, but I was just curious about your other cast members, if you will, in the book. And I was just curious if that pulls like from your own circle of friends, or if these are people that you've had previous encounters with, or especially like Liam and Bowie and how important they are to Jackson. Where did those characters develop?
Yeah. I don't believe any writer can make any character like completely from the ether. I think every character has a little bits of the writer in them, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, and bits of the people in their lives. But I don't think Bowie or Liam really drew in particular from any one person that I can think of, or any particular like parts of my life. In some ways, since the Breakup List is a romantic comedy, there are certain kind of tropes that the best friend needs to fit into and that the love interest needs to fit into. And so those tropes helped kind of guide me into looking at how they could exist in relationship to Jackson, while at the same time giving myself freedom to make sure that they were like full and complete people with their own wants and needs and not just caricatures. That said, I would say the person in the book that probably comes closest to being based on a real person is Dr. Lockley, Jackson's theater teacher, who has all of the good bits from my own high school theater teacher and a few of like borrowed anecdotes from my high school theater teacher as well. But any of Dr. Lockley's flaws are completely her own and not a reflection of my amazing high school theater teacher who got me through high school alive, thankfully. But yeah, and I think it's really weird. Like while I'm in the process of writing, maybe I could identify where parts of a character came from. But once the book is done, even just as I revise, they sort of take on a life of their own. And I stop being able to identify where things came from. It just becomes a matter of how they could, like they always had to have been that way, and it makes sense. And there's no other way they could have been.
That makes total sense. Like they are, like you said, their own complete character in that way, that they have their wants and their goals and their future ambitions as well. I was also curious what inspired you to showcase an ALS speaking main character, especially when his own family doesn't even sign.
Yeah. When I was very young, I got put into speech therapy. My teachers said I had a lisp. I think, with hindsight being 2020, I had gay voice, and they put me in speech therapy to try to get rid of my gay voice. And many of the other kids in speech therapy were deaf or hard of hearing. And so I've had friends off and on through my life that are deaf. As an adult, I have many people in my life that are deaf that I love and care about, as well as one of my best friends is a child of a deaf adult. And I've been seeing increased representation of deaf main characters in YA. This year alone, there's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. Anna Sortino's On the Bright Side and Sydney Langford's The Loudest Silence, which I was really excited to see coming out. But I wasn't seeing a whole lot of intersectional deafness represented, not a whole lot of queer or BIPOC characters. And I'm very cognizant that it's not a community that I am part of, and that I can either take space or make space for those stories. And it was my hope in writing Jackson's story that I would make room for more creators to tell their stories, particularly queer and BIPOC deaf stories. And I certainly had, in addition to the people in my life that I could talk to about it, I did a ton of research separate from them, because, your friends don't always tell you like how crappy things can be sometimes. A lot of friends want to shield you from the realities of their life. So I also, interviewed strangers who had no emotional attachments to me and could be bluntly honest. I watched several documentaries, read a lot of books, including Sarah Novick's True Biz, which was really amazing. And I actually started following a lot of Black ASL users on TikTok. And I would love to be able to say the names of them because I still follow them, but TikTok has changed how they display usernames like 5 times in the last year. And so I don't know what anyone's name is anymore.
Oh, no.
You just recognize the faces.
I just recognized the face, and I was like, didn't the username used to be different? Oh, well. But that was, I have very mixed feelings about TikTok, including how easy it is for me to ignore my time limit on it and just hit 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
But the people out there kind of sharing their language and their culture, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. And that's been a really net positive of TikTok, despite all of the other qualms I have with it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to read from Jackson's point of view, the way that you have the dialogue. It really opens your eyes. Like, it's just done so well. And you can so clearly see from his point of view, which was really interesting. So this is kind of a weird question, but how do you go about finding the strangers to meet with them? And like, how do you approach that conversation of, hey, I'm an author and this is what I want to do?
I find, a lot of time it's not total strangers. It is friends of friends,
Someone knows someone.
someone who can make an introduction. That said, there are also, there are people that study deaf culture. There are people that teach ASL, and sometimes you just have to send out an email and be like, "Hey, I see you study this, or I see you teach this. Could I email you 5 questions if you have time?"
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are busy. A lot of people will ignore your emails, but sometimes you'll get yeses.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Is the family not knowing how to sign, was that something that you found to be one of the probably more shielded answers from your friends, but was that pretty common to find with ASL members?
That was actually a fairly frequent refrain,
Okay.
especially from deaf folks that don't come from deaf families. That there was very little in between. It was either the family all embraced it and learned it, or the family all pretended it was like that hearing aids or cochlear implants would solve the problem.
Mm.
I
That's gotta be so
did not
difficult.
encounter. I don't think I encountered anyone who was like, "Yeah, my family learned, but they're not very good." Like,
Okay.
it's either they learned and they're fluent now, or they didn't want to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah, they're either all in or all out. That I think that aspect of the novel was so surprising to me, especially because you could see how important and how impressive it was to Jackson that Liam wanted to learn and that he was taking lessons from Bowie and ensuring that he was included in that aspect of his life as much as anything else.
It was, but I think also it's not entirely uncommon, not only in ASL circles, but just in anyone who speaks a second language.
Mhm.
A lot of other Iranian Americans, they're either fluent in Persian because they learned growing up, or their parents tried to teach them, they resisted, and then they just gave up, and there's nothing. And then oftentimes they would pick it up, try to learn it when they're older. That's actually what I'm doing. I'm studying Persian now as an adult, because I didn't learn it when I was younger. And I think, as with any language in any community, there are patterns that tend to repeat, especially the pressures of assimilation
Mhm.
versus of preserving your culture.
Very interesting. So I want to kind of go in a different direction just because you brought it up and I've been
Okay.
curious now. You sort of alluded to like the publishing journey. Can you take us back to like your first book and your first introduction to publishing, and what was that like?
Oh, do you mean like my first published book?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Darius the Great is Not Okay was my first published book. It came out back in 2018. At that point, I had been writing seriously for, I guess, about 7 or 8 years. I started writing in 2010, originally with an eye to write screenplays. I was like, I should become a screenwriter. Of course, you need to know rich people or be rich or live in Hollywood to be a successful screenwriter. And I was none of those things. And I was like, maybe you don't need to know anyone to write books. And so first I turned one of my horrible screenplays into a horrible novel. It was not good. No one will ever see it. It's just, actually, I have a few critique partners that I'm still friends with to this day that have seen it. No one else will ever get to see it. But I kind of got the writing bug, and I was writing and reading a lot more than I ever had when I was younger. I mean, when I was young, I thought you had to be dead to be an author because all the books we read in high school were by dead white men.
Yes.
But the 2010s saw the rise of young adult books, which I thought were much more exciting than boring adult books, and B also saw the creation of We Need Diverse Books. And I was really confronted with the fact that everything I had ever written before I wrote Darius was about straight white people, because I didn't know that I could write about anyone like me. And so I started writing the story of Darius back in March of 2015. And yeah, worked on it for about 2 years before I got an agent. And then it's kind of magical. Me and my agent revised it twice because my middle was really muddy, and then we sold it really quickly. And so it was a little bit of a whirlwind after spending many, many, many years of working on my craft and trying and getting nowhere, to suddenly be getting somewhere was a little alarming, especially because like being a writer was not something I like wanted for myself. It was sort of something I was doing in my spare time. And yet, my day job was in event production here in Kansas City. And in the pandemic, there were no more events. And so it turned out that writing ended up being the more stable career, and I had to become a full-time writer after that.
You're not the first theater person I've heard say that too. They're like, this is my stable job. I was like, that's so true.
Right? Who could predict? I don't know. I have a whole TED talk. TED should invite me, by the way, if you know anyone there, about the importance of arts education. But I think that's outside of the scope of this podcast.
We talk about anything and everything. Like I said, it's all on the table. And some people like that and some people don't, but we always say, well, it's our podcast.
I know, right?
We do what we want.
You make the rules.
Yeah. Like we talk about what we want. Sometimes it's really random. Sometimes sometimes it doesn't stay in the episode, but it's for us to look back on, and so you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask. Are you still involved then in the theater in any way now, or are you fully committed to writing full time?
Writing is my sole source of income.
Okay.
Now, my only relationship to theater is as a patron these days.
Okay.
But I have lots of friends that also still do it, and so I also hear about it plenty. As we have Taco Tuesdays, and I get to hear all about the drama.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. What was the most recent one or production that you've seen?
Oh, I will say I've seen a couple, but I will say my favorite, most recent production was I saw Some Like It Hot on Broadway for the third time about a week before it closed, and it was my first time seeing it with like the 100% like original cast. Every other time, the other two times I'd seen that there was at least one understudy performing. This time it was all of them, and it was amazing, and I loved that show, so I kept taking people to see it, which is why I saw it 3 times. I just think it was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had in my life.
That's incredible. Oh, you're making me have an itch it's been so long since I've been to any sort of show, and I used to go regularly with my family and my dad, and making me want to see something.
Right. I also, I'm lucky in a way. I have enough friends at enough places that if I want, I can't like get free tickets to things, but I can get a free seat in the booth next to the lighting console and it'll like watch the show out the window. So I do see quite a few things locally in Kansas City, especially the Kansas City Symphony and the Kansas City Ballet. The ballet just did a really cool production of Dracula. Oh my gosh, was it just, or was it like a year ago? Time is a flat circle.
We don't know time. I think I said that to Megan today, actually. I was so very cool. I have a friend who I was dragging him to an author event not long ago in St. Pete. He's the director of marketing for a theater company in Sarasota, in the Sarasota area. And I go, hey, I'm going to this author event in St. Pete and you're coming. And he was like, I don't know who this person is. I go, I know, but it's going to be great. We're going to have a good time. But I keep telling him, I'm like, let me know when you want me to come to a show and I'll be there.
Yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm available.
I'll make the drive. So I was looking at your website a little bit, and one thing I noticed, and I know you get this question a lot, but we tend to ask authors about what their writing advice is. And you actually had some unique advice on your website.
Ooh.
If you know what I'm talking about.
I don't think I do remember. It's been a while since I edited that page on my website.
Oh, you're good. So you mentioned that like if you really want to be a writer, almost picking up your favorite book and like rewriting it to an extent.
Oh, no, not to an extent. Copy it out
completely.
Verbatim.
Okay, copy it
Type
verbatim.
it word for word.
Yeah. So where did that advice come from? And is that how you actually started?
It's not how I started. That advice came from a literary agent named Janet Reed, who runs the Query Shark blog, which has been running for many years now, teaching writers how to write their query letters, and also just a general publishing knowledge blog. And that was one of the pieces of advice she gives often, and it stuck with me. I had been writing for quite a while, and I read craft books, and I wrote a lot. And Stephen King says the first 1,000,000 words are crap or whatever. But when I took Janet Reed's advice and I took Janny Nelson's I'll Give You the Sun, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and just copied it out word for word, I really felt like I had leveled up. There was an understanding of how a book in particular is crafted, where the chapter breaks fall, and how like the rhythm of paragraphs flows, and how word choice is made. And it was a very different experience copying it out than it was reading it. And I've read the book several times, but like copying it out myself, typing it into my computer, made me understand it in a completely different way. And it's something that now, if I ever find myself like stuck on a book, I'll pick up a book I really love and start copying it out. And I don't do the whole thing anymore. I'll usually just do a chapter or two. But it helps remind me like how to write.
That's so fascinating. It was really, really unique, for me at least. I'd never seen it before. So I thought it was so interesting. Well, I might have to give that a try because I'm intrigued by that. So
I mean, it really, really worked for me.
All right, so I know the Breakup List is coming out, well, as of this recording, it's coming out next week, which is super exciting. But then I also saw that you have a debut adult romance coming. I'll Have What He's Having is the title. Can you tell us more about that one as well?
Of course. So I'll Have What He's Having is a queer millennial mistaken identity, friends with benefits to lovers, set in Kansas City, and it features Farzan Alavi, who's 37 years old, Iranian American, and gay, and has kind of been floundering in his careers, multiple careers over the years, but finds out that his parents, who own an Iranian restaurant, are retiring and want to close it, and he says, "No, don't close it. I'll take it over," even though he doesn't know how to run a restaurant. And he accidentally meets David Curtis, who's also 37, who's a Black advanced sommelier studying for his master's sommelier certification at a really fancy wine bar in Kansas City. They meet, a little mistaken identity ensues, a one-night stand ensues, but they come to realize that A, there's a lot of chemistry between them, and B, David knows how to run a restaurant, and Farzan likes drinking wine, so they can help each other. Farzan by helping David study, and David by teaching Farzan how to run a restaurant. And of course, they decide it will be completely platonic and professional. And of course, they immediately fail to do so. So sparks fly, romance ensues. It's A, lot of fun. B, there's a lot of food and wine in it. And C, if I may be so bold, there's a lot of boning in it. Like, this one is not for young readers.
Not for the faint of heart.
I put it at like the 4 chili pepper level.
Oh, okay.
Spicy.
Yeah, for me, it's quite spicy. But I know everyone's like rankings is also different. Like what 4 chili peppers means is different. And also apparently they've been breeding jalapenos to be milder for years. There was like a whole expose about it. No, it was a thing.
Oh my gosh.
And I sent it to my friend and she's like, "It's Texas's fault. None of my jalapenos are spicy anymore." And I was like, apparently so.
Wow. Dang it, Texas.
That is true. The guac that I get at Rocco's Tacos, I mean, I've had to start telling them hot because the medium just isn't cutting it. There's no spice.
It isn't. Well, the short version of the article is that the vast majority of jalapenos grown go into like canned jalapeno products. And so they need them to be milder because then they can just add liquid heat to them to make a consistent product. Whereas if they let every jalapeno be natural, some jars would be spicy and some would be mild, and they can't like run a business that way if it's not a consistent heat level. So they're like, what if we breed them for flavor and not spiciness and just add heat after the fact? And unfortunately, that's ruined it for everyone now.
And here we are.
Oh my gosh. The food industry. What are they doing?
Right? I think, there's for every evil, there's a good, because they also made Brussels sprouts stop tasting disgusting. Like they bred them to be delicious. And I'm very glad because I love like a caramelized, like cast iron Brussels sprout.
Yes.
So good.
I think we always get Brussels sprouts as an appetizer whenever we get together. I'm almost positive.
Basically, if Brussels sprouts are on the menu wherever we go, I will order them.
Yeah, but like when we were kids, they were disgusting.
Yes.
So gross.
I guess I always blamed my mom for that.
No.
It's
Scientists
the
literally are
food
like, what if we
industry's
take
fault.
this and make it taste better? And they
Okay.
did.
Not sponsored at all, but I know that there is okay, Megan, I know there's a Cooper's Hawk by you. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's one in Kansas City, but
Yes, there is.
if there's a Cooper's Hawk there and you haven't been,
That's
you
the
have to
winery place,
go.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Have you had the Brussels sprouts?
I have. They're the only reason to go to Cooper's Hawk Winery.
Yeah.
I'm a wine snob and I hate every glass of wine I've ever had there, but I loved all the food there, especially the Brussels sprouts.
Their
Yes.
Brussels sprouts are unreal. Whenever I go there with anybody else, I say, are we getting this as an appetizer? Because if we're not, this is my meal. So I need to plan. I need to know if Brussels sprouts are coming, because otherwise that's my order.
I think there's few things in life better than like a brunch Brussels sprouts, where like, if you are a meat eater, like Brussels sprouts cooked in bacon fat in a cast iron, like, and then with little bacon bits crumbled over the top afterward, like, oh my gosh. There's a local place in Kansas City that does that, and it's just beautiful.
Chef's kiss.
I'm gonna get really hungry talking about.
I know.
This often happens when I'm involved in something.
Oh,
I'm a very food-driven creature.
I can imagine as you're writing too. You're writing, I'll have what he's having, and you're like, oh man, now I need to go eat.
Yeah.
Right.
And get a good glass of wine.
Yep. Let me go do some research on the scene.
Right. Research.
Research. What's the timeline for that one? When can we expect that?
The book comes out August 27th, I think is the date. Just in time for Romance Con up in Milwaukee. And actually, as of this recording, the cover gets revealed in my newsletter in like 25 minutes. So, and then it'll go live on Instagram tomorrow, March 28th. So yeah, it's very exciting. The cover is really, really good.
Oh, well, I know totally different audience, but I love how vibrant this one is. Like just the whole, sorry, I've got that darn blur on, but it's so vibrant and bright.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, how involved were you in that process, or do you like to be involved in that?
I'm not an artist, and I really feel it's not my job to tell an artist how to do their work. In this case, I did help select the artist. B. Fernandez is the illustrator that designed the beautiful cover for the Breakup Lists. I know it's basically like, here's my super secret Pinterest board with what I think the characters look like. Please never let anyone else see this. No one is allowed to know what's on my Pinterests. And then B went away, came back with concepts. We, finessed some. We did, I would say the one thing I guess there are two areas that I usually pay attention to on a cover. And one is making sure the characters look right-ish, including especially skin tone and body shape. Because I'm really annoyed with like, I don't want to say whitewashing necessarily, but like pale washing of characters of color, that always bothers me. And then thin washing of fat characters always bothers me. So those are the things I pay attention to. And then if we have multiple color options, then I will usually give a visceral, ooh, I think purple is lovely. And sometimes marketing will agree with me that purple is lovely, and sometimes they'll disagree with me. In this case, we all agreed the purple one really, really popped. And but yeah, otherwise, like I try to really stay out of that process in a way, because I know I wouldn't like it if someone told me how to write my book. so I try not to tell someone how to make a cover, but it is a cover for my book. So I try to give a few notes here and there.
Yeah. You want to like it. You want to like it. And so you're getting ready to do a bit of a tour, I saw, for this. What is your favorite part of touring?
Oh, I mean, the glib part of me wants to be like all the great restaurants I can visit while I'm out of town. The truth is, I love getting to talk to readers. It's one of the best parts about being an author, in particular being a young adult author, and you get to talk to teens who I think are endlessly fascinating and smart and empathetic and creative and deserving of a far better world than we have left them. But I really love getting to talk to them. And I also love getting to talk to like fellow authors. That's really exciting. And it's something that I missed a great deal during the pandemic. And so this will actually like be my first time going on tour for a book, and I'm
Wow.
really, really excited.
Where is your first stop on your tour?
If you count the one that I drive to from my apartment, then my first stop is in Kansas City, Missouri at Rainy Day Books. But if we don't count that, then my first stop is at East City Books in Washington, D.C. on April 2nd.
Oh my gosh.
With Ellen O. It'll be an amazing
Wow.
conversation.
And is this like United States wide, or is there specific spots that you're going to hit for your tour?
Yeah, it covers both coasts.
Okay.
I hit East City Books in Washington, D.C. on April 2nd, Little Shop of Stories in Decatur, Georgia on April 3rd with Becky Albertalli. Decatur is in the Atlanta metro for any listeners who don't know this. Then I do Loudmouth Books in Indianapolis with Leah Johnson, Women and Children First in Chicago with Caleb Roerig, and then Books Inc. in Berkeley, California with Mason Deaver on April 6th. I immediately forgot what days are, how math works, what the sequence of numbers are. But it's all available on my website.
I was immediately impressed that you were able to just rattle all
just
that
like,
off.
yes.
I was like, whoa, okay.
I'm actually really impressed with myself for not messing something up.
That's a lot of like really quick turnaround though from I mean, you really are like coast to coast. It's like every day you're somewhere new. Holy cow.
I am. It's going to be, the older I get, the more I hate getting up early in the morning. And there are a few early flights that I couldn't quite get out of doing. So it's going to be a little miserable. Because if I have an early flight, it doesn't matter what time the flight is. I'm like up every 30 minutes starting at 3 a.m. Like sitting up, oh my gosh, did I miss my flight? Fall back to sleep. Oh my gosh, did I miss my flight? Go back to sleep. Oh my gosh, is my alarm set? Yes, all 3 alarms are set. They didn't spontaneously go off, but it's a miserable night's sleep.
Story of my life. My husband and I were just talking about that because it wasn't even for a flight, but I had a similar experience for that book event that I was at. He goes, oh, like, did you sleep well while you were up in the Pensacola area? And I go, no, because despite the fact that I had 5 alarms set, I just continued to wake up thinking I was going to miss it. And so
it's just, I don't know what it is about being a human, but you just, your body's like, oh my gosh, you should go somewhere. Go now.
Yeah. Go at 3 a.m.
I so badly just talking with you want to hop a flight to Atlanta and like be there.
Come join us. It'll be lots of fun.
It sounds amazing. I'm like, how easy would it be for me to do this, to get up there since you don't come all the way south?
Well, me and Becky are both theater kids, so it's going to be an amazing conversation.
That's awesome. Well, that's so exciting for you. I'm excited for you. Are you going to do another tour then again in the fall? Busy year?
I don't know yet. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do so. I think I just have to wait and see until plans are a little bit firmer. But I will, if nothing else, I'll be at Steamy Lit Con in Anaheim in like the beginning of August. And then I will be at Romance Con in Milwaukee in September. And I assume I'll probably do a few other things, if nothing else, here in Kansas City.
Very cool. Megan, you'll have to hop over.
I know. I was going to say that's like a 3-hour drive for me. I could make it. Okay. I'm in Des Moines, Iowa, so I'm not that far. Just on I-35. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Well, and Des Moines has a really lovely indie bookstore that I visited, I think, last year or 2 years ago. And of course, now I'm completely blanking on the name because as soon as I think of any books or bookstores, I immediately forget every book I've ever read and every bookstore I've ever visited.
Yes, there's been a few, especially in the last couple of years, that have opened up. The one I'm thinking of, and maybe it's not the one you're thinking of, but it's Reading in Public. Does that ring any bells?
No. Oh, it was called Beaverdale Books.
Oh yeah, yep. That's over there too.
Yeah,
we've got both. We got it all.
No, I think it's great. I loved getting to visit Des Moines. I actually have been meaning to go back up there fairly soon and see more of it.
Yeah,
as you said, only 3 hours away.
Yeah,
up by 35.
It's really, it's very doable.
Des Moines is a great place. All right. Well, Adib, where can people find you if you want to go ahead and plug yourself a little bit?
Yeah, you can find me on the web at adibkhorram.com, ADIBKHORRAM. I have a monthly newsletter that only goes out once a month unless I have something super special like a cover reveal or whatever. And I always keep that fairly up to date. You can also find me on Instagram at Adib Khorram, on Tumblr at Adib Khorram, but that's mostly Star Trek and Untamed posts because those are my obsessions. On Blue Sky at Adib Khorram, that's where I decamped after Twitter melted down. And on TikTok at adib.khorram, because even though there isn't an Adib Khorram on TikTok, TikTok wouldn't let me pick the name Adib Khorram. They made me add a dot, and I felt
Oh my gosh.
extremely offended.
You're
Goodness.
like, why
TikTok.
can't I just have consistency in my life on every platform?
It's a nightmare. And I've been fortunate. There's not a lot of other Adib Khorrams, so I've been able to get almost everything I wanted. And then I go on TikTok, and they're like, no.
No, the one place.
Well, for anyone listens to the podcast, we'll make it easy and just link to all of them so that
Perfect.
one click and they are good to go. Adib, thank you so much for joining us. It's such an honor and a pleasure to talk with you. I can't wait for everyone to read the Breakup List. It is, like we said, it is witty, charming, clever, and I can't wait for it to be in everyone's hands so soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Bree and Megan. It's been an absolute delight.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.